So diving into questions that come from the community.
Yeah.
Someone said to me this week, I have a friend, she's curious about CrossFit, always asks about it, came to Bring a Friend once, but always hits this roadblock of like, I'm just afraid I'm going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And won't take the plunge to just come and start getting fit because they have this fear.
Mm-hmm.
And, she was trying to make all these arguments about how, she doesn't get hurt at CrossFit and you can scale it. And, of course, those are all the right answers. The point of having a professional is to keep you safe and teach you how to do it properly and teach you how to make the right decisions in the moment and all that sort of thing. And CrossFit is very safe. It's not risk-free. It's safer than almost any other recreational activity you could possibly do.
When done properly.
When done properly.
Yeah.
Even done poorly, CrossFit's safer than a lot of things.
Yeah.
Even CrossFit with poor technique is safer than, say, pickleball, which people seem to have no problem jumping out there and playing pickleball. It's estimated that pickleball will become the most dangerous sport on earth this year. It will surpass soccer for number of injuries per hours played because people just hop out there and, they just want to play a game and have fun. And they have no concept that their joints and muscle stability is nowhere near prepared for something like that.
I wonder if that number is skewed by the fact that pickleball is played by like older people quite a bit more.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And so it's like total hours is a difficult thing to compare because if you're like soccer is primarily young people and pickleball is mostly older people, you're going to have more injuries with the older people if they're not prepared for it for sure.
But I think that kind of is the jumping off point for how I answered that question to that person was that we can have a debate and look at the stats on the safety numbers and, injuries per hours played or whatever. But the bigger picture point is that I'm reading this book right now on risk. Humans are terrible at understanding and assessing risk and making the right decisions in the face of predictable outcomes. Life will demand that you perform functional movements at some point, or maybe you will want to perform functional movements like go play pickleball. And if you don't regularly practice functional movements, you will fail.
Yeah.
And in the CrossFit level 1, the line we use is there will be a loss of game, mission, or life. And so it sounds a little bit dramatic to say like, you might die. But what came up a lot this week because of the snowstorm and the very many number of emergency medical people that we have within the BRIO community was the number of people that have heart attacks during a blizzard when they have to shovel.
Yeah.
And this idea that that's a functional movement, you need to clear your driveway to be able to leave, to drive your car. And the number of people, it's predictable. Every time there's a blizzard, the emergency medical people will be like, oh, yeah, heart attack, heart attack, heart attack, heart attack. That's what the ER will be full of. STARS has to respond to numerous heart attacks because that becomes a life-threatening amount of physical activity for someone to just shovel their driveway.
Going to 0 to 100, it's just overwhelming.
Yeah. And is that even 100?
Well,
for them it is. For them it is. Yeah. It is above 100. It's above their physical capacity to the point that when we were talking about this in the gym this week, many people were like, oh yeah, I know someone that died shoveling their driveway. My uncle, my neighbor, my whatever had a heart attack or whoever passed away doing that. You're like, when we come into the gym, we're like, oh, my back is sore from shoveling. It's like, you should be grateful that all you have is a sore back.
Yeah. Because
you come in the gym every week and you deadlift and you squat and you sprint and you jump and you lift and you drag and you carry and you do all these things so that when you have to do what we would consider a basic functional life task, like shovel your driveway, it's no problem. You're like, oh, my back's a little sore. You're not, I'm in the hospital because I had a heart attack or RIP, I've died because that was an amount of physical activity that exceeded my capacity.
Yeah.
So when people are like, oh, I'm afraid I might get hurt at the gym, actually what you need to fear is that life will present a task that you won't be able to do. Mm-hmm. I taught a seminar in Montreal with 2 of the Canadian crew, love them to death, Matt Dubrec and Val Boileau. And I can't remember who it was, but one of them said they had a lady that came into their gym, an older lady that wanted to do CrossFit, to get fit, because she could not babysit her grandson because she realized, or maybe her kids told her, I'm not sure, that if there was an emergency and she needed to pick him up and take him outside and put him in the car, she physically could not do it.
Yeah.
So whatever the kid weighs, 30 or 40 pounds or something, she couldn't pick up the kid, make it down the stairs in the driveway and into the car. She didn't have the capacity. So she was like, I need to get stronger, or should something bad happen, if there was an emergency, I would fail. And I would fail my grandson. I wouldn't be able to help. So those are the kinds of things that people need to fear, right. Being presented with a situation that you should be fully capable of doing, and you would find yourself unable to.
Yeah. And I think the important parts there are CrossFit is no more dangerous than any other type of weight training or exercise or fitness or whatever. And if you've heard that it is, that's just false.
Yeah.
There was a whole lawsuit about it.
Yeah.
It is no more dangerous than any other activity, but it is superior in its ability to build capacity and functionality. In that, if you just do bicep curls, you're not going to be as functionally capable as if somebody who does, compound movements. So if you're doing something else instead of CrossFit, sure, you're building some level of whatever exercise capacity, but it's not going to be nearly as effective. So you're basically just wasting time and effort when you could be making better use of your time. And then, even if you do get hurt, okay, back to shoveling snow. I've been pushing snow with our big ice rink scraper thing and hit a crack and put my back out. And I couldn't work out for a week and a half or 2 weeks after that. And it's not that I was like, well, I'm just never going to shovel snow again because it's too dangerous because I hurt myself doing it. I just realized that, okay, I can't rest it on my sternum and push with my whole body. I have to have some buffer here. So if I do hit a crack, that I can cushion it and absorb and not throw my back out.
Would you say you needed better technique?
I needed better technique. So you can take precautions to make activities less dangerous, but no matter what, every activity you do is going to have some level of risk. Walking down the street, you can fall and break your tailbone. You're not going to be like, well, walking's dangerous, I'm just not going to do it. It's ridiculous to think if something has any little bit of risk at all, you should just not do it ever.
At the level 1, sometimes we'll do a little survey when we start to talk about safety of movements and how essential they are to life. How many of you played a sport growing up? Pretty much everybody will put up their hand. How many of you were injured at some point playing that sport? And you're like, yep. How many of you healed and went back to playing that sport once you were better? Yep.
Yeah.
You're like, we understand that that's just a part of activities and sport and games and fun, right? Why did you go back to playing hockey after your knee healed? Because you like it, because it's fun. It's a good time. Yes, it also maybe helps you develop some fitness and physical capacity, but it's because you enjoy it.
Yeah.
And you accept some level of risk for that. And you know that it's fine, that you can heal from something and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important for people to realize that it's not 100% safe, but especially us, we try to make it as least risky as possible.
Yeah.
And you're doing it under the supervision of somebody else. And, somebody's there watching you to make sure that if things do get sketchy, we'll come by and be like, whoa, slow down or whatever, flatten your back.
Yeah.
So we're trying to make the best of the situation. But if you're just frozen with fear, you're going to end up regretting that in the long run.
Yeah.
You're going to reach that point where you need some level of capacity and you're not going to have it. And that's where you're going to fail.
Yeah.
I
think there's a parallel. I've been using this analogy quite a bit. You preserve your health and your fitness the way we do for the long term to serve yourself well in the future. Really in the last few decades of your life is when your fitness really, really makes or breaks quality of life versus not. Almost any of us will agree. If I get to the point where I can't get off the toilet by myself and I can't, take care of whatever, people are like, take me out. I don't want to be alive if that's my quality of life. So there's a minimum level of physical capacity that we need and we all want for quality of life, for independent living and to enjoy being alive. And it's some basic things. You need to be able to sit down and stand up, get out of a chair, get off the toilet. You need to be able to lunge down and tie your shoes. You need to be able to do some stairs. You need to be able to carry your groceries and put things away on a shelf and basic life tasks. So working back from there, we know the physical capacity declines past a certain point. You need to have built up basically a health savings account, a fitness savings account so that you can draw down on some, but you'll never go below that threshold.
Yeah.
So if you spend your peak developmental years up to about age 40, unfortunately, because I'm 40 now, but basically childhood through 20s, 30s, and to about midlife, not developing physical capacity because you're so scared of the downside of maybe hurting yourself that you forget to actually ever develop any fitness. That's the biggest risk.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as your retirement planning. If you do your entire portfolio because you're so paranoid of anything ever going down in value that all you do is put it in T-bills that barely make any return, you will not meet your retirement goals.
Right.
So in the earlier years of your saving and, retirement planning, you have a more aggressive portfolio. That's what you do. You have higher risk because you have time to manage the ups and downs, to recover from the downs, basically. And then as you get closer to retirement, your risk profile changes and the portfolio distribution changes because you have to go to lower risk investments because you don't have time to recover from the downsides. You can't be gambling in Bitcoin when you're 75. Yeah. You can't do it. So I think, but if you spend so much of your peak developmental years just being paranoid of getting hurt, in the end, you've actually harmed yourself by getting no results.
Yeah.
Actually, the biggest risk of a fitness program isn't the injuries. It's that you get no results. It's that you waste not only your money, but your time. You don't get the time back, that you waste your time and you don't develop any capacity.
Yeah. And to develop capacity, you have to have intensity.
Yeah.
And intensity comes at a greater risk.
Intensity drives results.
Yeah. Intensity drives results. But when you work at intensity, you increase the risk of something going wrong, right? So you need to, earn your intensity by taking the time to learn to move well. You need to know your limits and not overreach. You need to be smart in your recovery. You need to take care of all the pieces of the puzzle. So a young kid who's 18 years old, can be ambitious and be like, I'm going to go for that 300-pound snatch, or I'm going to go for that 20 muscle ups in a row, or I'm going to do whatever. Because it's like, if something goes wrong, they have time to recover from it afterwards. But if you're like 55 and you just started CrossFitting, your goal should not be, I'm going to go for that 300-pound snatch. If you're just learning how to snatch, right? That's just, you're too far into the game to have the time to earn that goal and then to deal with the risks associated with going for that goal.
So if we're talking about the types of risks you can take or the types of decisions you can make in one season of your life versus another, this kind of ties into something that really rung true with me from when I was at the CrossFit for Health Summit in Texas. He goes by Wall Street weightlifter, Graciano Rubio.
He's strong as hell.
Strong as hell, that guy. And he's awesome, very intelligent, really gets it. He was on a panel and he just said something that I wrote down, that he said most of what we consider genetic gift, talent, is actually just really early childhood development. And that really good hand-eye coordination, really good power, explosiveness, flexibility, whatever it is, that when you start to see a kid that's 15 or 20 or 25 and you're like, wow, they're so gifted, the genetics. He's like, that actually just starts way earlier, from the time they're 1. Are they allowed to or encouraged to jump and climb and roll and balance and do all these things, or are they trapped in a stroller most of the time? And I was like, oh shit. That got me thinking, where I was like, I never really considered how important development is all the way back that far. I tend to think of it picks up as like when you start playing sports and things, but you're like, no. We're talking back to the earliest phases of neurological development. And that we were walking the kids to school today, and it's snowy out in the park and everything. And I see the parade of moms pushing the big chariot stroller and towing kids on a sled. And I turned to you and I said, why are those kids not walking?
Yeah.
These were like 7, 8-year-old kids. These aren't like babies. I was like, why are those kids not walking to school? Maybe it's a little slower. Maybe it's annoying. I know it's annoying. But why are they not learning to balance themselves and jump and move over the uneven terrain of the snow? And,
And Dash was walking to school and he was like climbing over snow mounds and rolling down the hills and getting his feet stuck in super deep snow. And, he was a chaos goblin for sure going to school. But that's so good for their development. Yeah. It's kind of working through those weird, awkward positions right from early on that helps them develop.
Yeah. So, there's important developmental windows that you can maximize, and it may or may not, you may not have been aware of it. It may have been happening when you were a child and it was dependent on the decisions your parents made. And unfortunately, that's not up to you. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to understand it. Then the more you develop earlier, the better. Would be the big takeaway. So you develop this level of physical capacity as your health savings account. And then at some point you start drawing down on it. And that's just reality, and it sucks, and it is. So,
and I think the whole quote, when's the best time to start investing, or when's the best time to start working out? And the answer is 10 years ago. Yeah. But if not then, now.
The second best time is now.